LOL take two. LOL take two. LOL take two. Now listen. I remember the line my folks, teachers, babysitters, aunts, uncles, pretty much everybody would say to me when I was being particularly precocious as a child. Tony, can you take it down a notch? Of course, if that didn't work, the next order was, Tony, go outside and play in traffic. Why should I take it down a notch? Don't you want me to be creative and amusing and excel in life? Silence, silence, silence. Fine, I'll go play in traffic. But you'll be sorry. Of course, this was the 1970s, and there was little chance of not hearing an oncoming car and getting run over in traffic. The hot rods that populated the streets of Urbandale, Iowa, Chevy Camaros, Plymouth Furies, and AMC Pacers sounded like tanks coming down the streets and could be heard in neighboring Nebraska. It seems like navigating life as an adult is one big volume adjustment, dialing it up a notch, taking it down a notch. I realized that it has been 6 months since I finished Season 5 of these podcasts. But I tell you, the last 8 months have been a bit of a roller coaster. Of course, we lived through one of the most ghastly election cycles ever in the U.S., down a notch. But then there were some really great things that helped balance out all that negativity. Up a notch. Last August, I had this gut feeling I needed to go visit my favorite aunt and uncle. They have been chronicled many times in these essays. I heeded that impulse and traveled to Minneapolis for a long weekend with the express intention of spending 99% of my time with them. And I did. Way up a notch. Now, my Aunt Carolyn, or Auntie C as I call her, has been one of my heroes since I can remember. Somebody who really made a difference in my life. I think we bonded at quite an early age. First of all, she was beautiful and had glamorous Elizabeth Montgomery and bewitched hair. But we connected on so many other things. A love of books, maps, theater, our family history, and stories. But a huge thing we bonded over were the burdens and responsibilities that we both shared of being the eldest children of 3 siblings. Auntie and I commiserated on advising and dealing with the sensitive middle children, and then there were the monsters, also known as the youngest children. Of course, this guidance was always given in an eldest child, loving and nurturing way. Now, Auntie freely admitted she was no saint. When my mother, who was 5 years younger than her, was born, their folks offered my auntie a choice. You can share your room with your adorable little baby sister, or you can share your room with the cedar chest. She opted for the cedar chest and made no bones about it. Years later, she was visiting us during a god-awful hot and humid July. My little brother, Timmy, had a wading pool. As the legend goes, Auntie put her lawn chair in the middle of the wading pool, completely hogging the whole pool to herself, and when Timmy would approach it to cool himself off, Auntie would spray him with the garden hose. She denied this story for years until we found an incriminating old photo in an album documenting this eldest child aggression. Yeah, it happens. Auntie C was my surrogate mom when I was in college and finding my way. I'd take my dirty laundry on the number 645 bus out to the suburbs and spend the weekend at their house. Auntie never openly judged some of my stupid decisions, or sprayed me with a garden hose for that matter. My finances in college were a mess. She hand-wrote mimeographed budget sheets and showed me how to fill them out, praying that I would pick up some semblance of fiscal responsibility. We would go through my filled-in budget sheets together, and I'd ask with genuine concern, I don't see where I enter Cyndi Lauper records into this. Even during my visit last August, Auntie and I sat up late every night talking about stuff. I shared my latest day job travails of being given personality tests by these newly hired micromanagers, like we were suddenly employed at some Church of Scientology information center. Auntie offered her eldest child sage advice. Sounds like somebody needs to retire. I told her about Bill's and my upcoming journey to Turkey and Greece, and she wanted to hear all the details. I showed her where we were going on a map, and she made me promise I would tell her all about it when we returned. Her walking was labored, but I gave her my arm, and we walked around the block daily, which was nearly a half mile. She kept saying, you can come back and visit whenever you want to. When are you coming back? Auntie, I'll let you know, but I'm still here right now. Shortly before my visit, Auntie had her car keys taken away from her and was not happy about that at all. She made me promise I wouldn't tell her younger sister about that, and I didn't. Sorry, Mom, eldest child code of conduct as opposed to the radio-free youngest children. You didn't hear it from me, but... About 3 weeks after I visited, Auntie took a bad fall and shattered her femur, which was in between a fake titanium hip and a fake titanium knee. Why they don't put in a fake titanium femur while they're at it, I'll never know. A surgery ensued to try and put everything back together as Bill and I headed off on our 2.5-week adventure to Turkey and Greece. Now talk about dialing it up a notch. When you travel, especially to such historic countries for the first time, all senses are heightened. Of course, you're spending a lot of money, so you feel like you better get your money's worth. But between the unfamiliarity of these new places, the sights and smells, the food, these new people, you owe it to yourself to get the most out of the experience. Up a notch. And we sure did. We started in Istanbul, not Constantinople, it's in Istanbul. It's an old song, just Google it. A couple days later, we were waking up at 3:15 a.m. in Cappadocia, Turkey, and heading off for a sunrise balloon ride because our dermatologist told us we both had to do this. Now, neither Bill nor I are particularly fond of heights. I think I'm a little more daring, as I do like parasailing when we go to Puerto Vallarta. Of course, parasailing is kind of different than a balloon. You have a life vest on. If the rope breaks, you just drift down and land in the water and float. My favorite thing about parasailing is doing Peter Pan legs and singing, "I'm flying at the top of my lungs." Now, try it. It's quite exhilarating, and the birds look at you like, what in the hell is wrong with this queen? Even last summer in Santa Fe, we were on the famous Rio Grande Gorge Bridge, trying to get a decent picture of the gorge. An 18-wheeler truck would drive across the bridge going 80 miles an hour, shaking the bridge, and us, to our core, petrified we'd be thrown off and dropped 200 feet into the Rio Grande. No parachute, no Peter Pan legs, just instant death. But here we were in Turkey, wolfing down a snack box from the hotel at 4 a.m. and prepared to be in a gondola with 20 other people. I had the Fifth Dimension song, Up, Up and Away in My Beautiful Balloon, on my iPhone Music. I kept playing it over and over until Bill, ready to pop me with the snack box, finally said, "Okay, that's enough. Thank you." The balloon ride was one of the trip's highlights. But we got word that Auntie's surgery hadn't gone very well. She still couldn't walk, but was now in rehab and being rather ornery. Several days later, we boarded a small, really nice ship that took us through the Aegean Sea, stopping at points in Turkey as well as Greece on our way to Athens. Our first Greek island had been a swap out by the cruise line. We were supposed to visit Troy, home of the famous Trojan horse, but no, instead we visited this little island called Lemnos. It was okay, rather scruffy looking, but we walked up to their lookout point, took some pictures, and headed back down to the port. We stopped at a taverna for some lunch and sat down next to a few customers. In about 2 minutes, they hollered out to some people walking by, "Hey, y'all, why don't y'all come sit with us?" I have seen the movies Never on Sunday, Zorba the Greek, and Mamma Mia, and nobody ever said y'all in any of them. I didn't travel 6,813 miles to listen to some loudmouth yahoos from America, so we got up and we bailed. 4 tavernas down, there was one that was just opening for the day. It had a cute waitress and a really nice-looking older Greek guy with big arms who was the owner, who invited us to take a seat. 3 local workmen on their lunch breaks took a table next to us. A nice Greek family, mother, father, and Pugsley Adams' child, sat nearby. Everyone well-behaved. Not loud, not saying y'all. The workman wanted to send some wine to our table. "Oh, thank you so much, but we are guests in your beautiful country." We sent a carafe of wine over to them. It turned out to be a wonderful afternoon with the locals. And the food, oh my God. A Greek salad like nothing I have ever tasted. Plus, did I mention the owner was a hottie? Yes, I'm cheap. Apparently, due to high winds, the cruise line swapped out another island we really wanted to visit, Mykonos, and instead dropped us in Patmos, Greece. And we saw some monastery and some windmills, but it was no Mykonos. Bill kept saying, I don't want to be on this island. We had a little lunch by the sea. No haughty taverna owner this time, just some poor overworked pierced waitress who served us a sad excuse for a Greek salad. The croutons were Wonder Bread that had barely been run through the toaster. We hightailed it back onto the ship and christened the little island of Patmos Pot Roast. Back in the States, they were going to try and put poor Auntie's leg back together with a second surgery, this time basically putting in a metal femur. Back in Greece, we finally made it to one of the scheduled islands. Yay! The legendary island of Santorini. Its towns perched high on what is left of a volcanic caldera. You take a cable car to get up or down to the sea, or you can brave this huge staircase that is also used by donkeys carrying people up and down. No, thank you. We had several days at sea after that, where I could chill out and work on my travel journal so that I wouldn't miss any details when I shared them with Auntie. It was lovely, and everything was up a notch, from sipping ouzo on our hotel's rooftop and marveling at the Parthenon, to avoiding donkey poop-covered staircases in Santorini. Back from being up a notch to coming back to the horror happening in the USA, down a big notch. On top of it, my poor auntie, having endured 2 surgeries, the second one having been successful, suffered a massive stroke and died 4 days later. My favorite auntie was suddenly no more. She would never hear about our trip. She would never be able to give me her eldest child 2 cents on a big decision I had to make. Oh, Aunt Carolyn, I'm so sorry you are gone, but I will be forever grateful to have had you for so long. Years ago, Bill did a play with B. Arthur, and she'd have us over for dinner, and when she heard a contemporary had died, she'd say, "Well, we all move up a notch." Yeah, it's a little harsh, but it pretty much nails it. The great big final up a notch, so to speak. At Auntie's celebration of life, I had many friends of hers come up to me and say she was always talking about me and my adventures. They leaned in and said, "You were her favorite." I said with a smile, "That's nice. I know." Of course, I'm sure that was meant after her 3 children, but it warms my heart that I was up towards the top of her tote board because she was my favorite as well. Thank you, and rest in peace, Auntie C. Here's some eldest child advice for you listeners. Take the trip. Ride the hot air balloon. Make the Peter Pan legs and belt out "I'm flying" at the top of your lungs while soaring 300 feet over the Pacific Ocean because, yes, in the end, we all move up a notch. LOL take 2. LOL take 2. LOL take 2.